Tonight, the war moved north. A Shahab-3 missile has struck Haifa, not Tel Aviv, not Jerusalem, not Dimona. Haifa, Israel's third largest city, positioned where the Carmel Range meets the Mediterranean at the northern edge of the coastal plain. And Haifa is not just another city on the map. It contains the port of Haifa, Israel's largest and most strategically important maritime gateway. It contains the Elbit Systems manufacturing complex, the second major Israeli defense production facility after the Rafael plant that Iran destroyed weeks ago. It contains the Bison Oil Refinery Group, the largest petroleum refining infrastructure in Israel, the system that processes the fuel every military vehicle, every generator, every emergency response vehicle, and every remaining functioning piece of wartime infrastructure still depends on. And that is what makes this strike so dangerous. The Shahab-3 that hit Haifa tonight did not hit just one target. It hit all of them at once. The missile's warhead detonated in the port district at 9:34 tonight, while Haifa streets were still carrying evening traffic, while the restaurants in the Carmel district were still serving dinner, while the population of Israel's north was still moving through the kind of constrained but present evening life that persists in a city that has not yet been the primary target of this conflict until tonight. The explosion that followed the Shahab-3's impact was visible from every elevated point in the northern coastal plain, from the Carmel Ridge above the city, from the communities of the Zebulun Valley to the northeast, from the decks of vessels in the eastern Mediterranean, far enough offshore that the port lights should have been the only thing visible from that distance. The port lights are not what is visible from offshore right now. The fire is. Because the Shahab-3 that hit the port district at 9:34 tonight reached the fuel storage infrastructure adjacent to the port terminal. And what is burning in Haifa right now is not a single building or a single facility. It is the concentrated industrial energy infrastructure of Israel's most important northern port city, and it was hit by a nuclear-capable ballistic missile while the city's population was still awake. In the next few minutes, I will show you exactly what the Shahab-3 did to Haifa tonight, why the specific combination of targets inside Haifa's port and industrial district makes this strike the most economically devastating single attack of this entire conflict, what the loss of the port of Haifa and the Elbit manufacturing complex simultaneously means for a country that has already lost its primary air gateway at Ben Gurion and its primary weapons production facility at Rafael, and what a conflict that has now struck Israel's primary air gateway, its primary sea gateway, and its two largest weapons production facilities in the same campaign means for the strategic situation of a country that cannot manufacture or import what it needs to continue defending itself. Before we get into it, thanks for watching. Your support is what keeps this going, and I genuinely appreciate every one of you here. Make sure you are subscribed and like the video so more people can follow this. Now let's get into it. To understand why the Shahab-3 striking Haifa at 9:34 tonight is the most strategically significant single strike in this conflict, you need to understand what Haifa actually contains and why the concentration of strategic infrastructure in this single northern city makes it the target whose loss compounds every previous loss in this conflict simultaneously. The port of Haifa is Israel's largest seaport. It handles approximately 60% of Israel's total import and export container volume. In a conflict where Ben Gurion International Airport has been struck and rendered non-operational, the port of Haifa has been the primary remaining gateway through which Israel can receive the imported goods, military hardware, fuel, food, and essential supplies that a modern economy and a military campaign require. Not a secondary gateway, the primary gateway. After Ben Gurion went dark, Haifa became everything Ben Gurion was, and more, because everything that had previously been split between air and sea freight was now entirely dependent on what could arrive through Haifa's container terminals. Medical equipment, pharmaceutical supplies that Israel does not produce domestically in sufficient quantities, food imports that supplement domestic production, military hardware components, including the interceptor components, the radar replacement parts, and the electronic warfare equipment that has been arriving through the port since Ben Gurion's runway was cratered, all of it was coming through Haifa. Nothing is coming through Haifa anymore, because the Shahab-3 that struck the port district at 9:34 tonight did not just damage terminal infrastructure. It reached the crane systems that load and unload container vessels. It reached the fuel storage that powers the port's logistics equipment. It reached the control infrastructure that coordinates the movement of vessels through the port approaches. And it reached the harbor approach channels and the pilot station infrastructure through the blast and structural damage that a 1,000-kilogram class warhead produces when it detonates in a densely built port district. The port of Haifa is not operating tonight. It will not be operating tomorrow. The timeline for restoring port operations to the level required to compensate for Ben Gurion's continued closure is not measured in days. It is measured in weeks at minimum, and in months if the assessment of crane system damage and approach channel integrity matches the worst of what the initial imagery suggests. Israel just lost its last major gateway to the outside world. Not its last air gateway, its last gateway. Air is gone, sea is gone. The maritime alternative to Ben Gurion that has been sustaining the import chain since the airport strike is burning in the dark at 9:34 on a Tuesday night. And the smoke column is visible from vessels still at sea who were approaching to deliver what Israel can no longer receive. The Elbit Systems manufacturing complex in Haifa is the second dimension of tonight's Shahab-3 strike that makes it categorically different from every previous Iranian attack on Israeli industrial infrastructure. Elbit Systems is one of Israel's three major defense companies, alongside Rafael and Israel Aerospace Industries. After Iran destroyed the Rafael facility at Haifa weeks ago, Elbit became the primary surviving Israeli defense manufacturing complex, still capable of producing and servicing the military electronic systems, drone systems, and precision guidance components that the IDF depends on for its continued operational capability. Elbit does not produce Tamar interceptors. That production was Rafael's, and it is gone. But Elbit produces the electronic warfare systems that protect Israeli aircraft, the targeting systems that guide Israeli precision munitions, the drone platforms that provide intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capability to the IDF across every operational theater, the command and control systems that allow what remains of the IDF's command infrastructure to function despite the earlier strikes and the degradation of the primary command architecture. All of those production capabilities were concentrated in the Elbit complex that the Shahab-3 struck tonight. Not all of Elbit's operations are in Haifa. Elbit maintains facilities across Israel. But the Haifa complex is the company's primary manufacturing hub for the specific systems that the IDF most urgently needs in the current operational environment. The loss of the Haifa Elbit complex does not produce the same immediate interceptor shortage that the Rafael strike produced. It produces a longer-term degradation of the IDF's ability to maintain and replace the electronic systems that everything else depends on. In weeks and months rather than days, the loss of Elbit's Haifa manufacturing will begin to show in the IDF's ability to sustain aircraft operations, command systems, and the intelligence infrastructure that has been holding Israeli military operations together despite the strain of this conflict. Iran has now destroyed both of Israel's primary defense manufacturing facilities. Rafael is gone, and Elbit Haifa is gone. Israel Aerospace Industries, which operates primarily near the Ben Gurion area, remains the only major defense manufacturing complex that has not been directly struck. However, even its operations are degraded due to the disruption caused by the strike on Ben Gurion Airport and the surrounding infrastructure. They are not eliminated, but they are no longer operating at full capacity. With Rafael and Elbit Haifa removed, the two facilities responsible for producing the majority of Israel's domestic military hardware are now out of the equation. This marks a structural shift in Israel's defense production capability that cannot be reversed quickly. The Bison Oil Refinery Group represents the third major strategic asset in Haifa's port district. Its loss adds an energy crisis on top of the industrial and military damage already sustained. Bison is Israel's largest petroleum refining complex, responsible for converting crude oil into usable fuel products. These include aviation fuel for military aircraft, diesel for generators powering hospitals and critical infrastructure, and petrol for civilian and military transport systems supporting millions of people. All of that refining capacity was concentrated in the Bison complex. The fire that began when the Shahab-3 warhead struck the refinery's fuel storage infrastructure at 9:34 tonight is not something that will be quickly contained. Refinery fires are among the most dangerous and difficult to control due to their extreme temperatures and the toxic combustion products they release. These conditions require specialized equipment that Israel's firefighting services did not have in sufficient quantities even before the conflict, and supply pressures have only made the situation worse. The fire now burning in Haifa is expected to continue for days. While it burns, refining capacity remains offline. And even after it is extinguished, recovery will not be quick. Infrastructure hit by a ballistic missile and exposed to prolonged high-temperature fire is not repaired. It must be rebuilt. In practical terms, Israel has just lost its fuel production capacity on top of its maritime gateway and weapons manufacturing, all in a single strike. Now consider what the Shahab-3 itself represents. This is not just about physical destruction. The weapon choice carries a strategic message. The Shahab-3 is Iran's designated nuclear delivery system and was previously used in a strike on Diona. The government's silence regarding the warhead used in that earlier strike created one of the most concerning information gaps of the entire conflict. Now that same missile has struck Haifa, not a military installation, but a civilian and industrial city of 280,000 people. The official statement confirms that a missile struck the district and that emergency services are responding, but it does not confirm the type of warhead used. It does not clarify whether the explosion was caused by a conventional payload or something else. This silence mirrors the response pattern seen after the Diona strike, only faster. The CTBTO monitoring network, which previously detected elevated radionuclide readings, is now analyzing data from stations across Cyprus, Turkey, and Greece. Their readings in the coming hours will provide the first independent indication of what the missile carried. Until then, the population of Haifa is left without clear information. The people of Haifa are not being told to wait for CTBTO data. They are not being told anything specific at all. They are being told only that an incident has occurred and that emergency services are responding. It is the same language, the same controlled messaging, applied now to a city where hundreds of thousands of people can see the fire with their own eyes, but are not being told what caused it. The political consequences of this strike are uniquely complex. Haifa has long been considered a model of Jewish-Arab coexistence within Israel. It maintains higher levels of civic integration than other major cities and has often been cited as proof that coexistence is possible. The Shahab-3 did not strike a specific community. It hit the shared industrial infrastructure that supports both. That matters. The impact is not only economic or military. It is social. Tensions between communities have been building throughout the conflict, even if they have not yet erupted into a full internal crisis. A strike on the symbolic city of coexistence adds a new layer of pressure that purely military analysis cannot fully capture. International response is already accelerating, driven by the civilian nature of the target. Previous strikes hit a nuclear facility, an airport, and a water plant. This time, the target was a major city during active evening hours. Haifa is not just infrastructure. It is homes, universities, hospitals, businesses, and daily life for hundreds of thousands of people. The central question now is the same one raised by every Shahab-3 deployment in this conflict, but intensified by the scale and nature of this target. What was in the warhead? Not what is claimed, but what was actually delivered. The fire burning in Haifa, the silence from authorities, the monitoring network scanning for radiation, and the population breathing the night air without clear information, all of it points to that single question. It is the question this conflict has been building toward from the beginning, and tonight at 9:34 it arrived in a city that was fully awake to experience it.